All right, the third book of Kings. Just kidding, that doesn't exist, but this is the third video about the two books of Kings. So after all, this is it. The people of Israel, they're about to get kicked out of their land. So let's see how each kingdom got to this point, looking in chapter 17. So we see in verse 22 that even if the king was good, the people were evil perpetually from all of the time from Jeroboam onward. The writer also shows when the book was written in verse 23 when he says, to this day. The book of Kings was written in exile. It's like the person looking back and saying what went wrong and then tracing the story. If you didn't notice, every single king from the northern kingdom was evil. They didn't have a single solid king like David the whole time. And the northern kingdom was taken and plundered and sent by the Lord into captivity and exile with the people of Assyria. It's sad. The Assyrians sent people to repopulate some of the empty cities, but God sent lions to eat them and a message to their king to fear and obey the Lord. Note to self, anytime I am near lions, obey. The Assyrian people feared the Lord, but they didn't obey him. And then like a dagger to the heart, the writer of Kings says, just like the people of Israel. But the kingdom of Judah was still standing, and so we have more kings. First is Hezekiah from the southern kingdom. That's the only kingdom that's left now. He's good. In fact, he was great. He was one of the best kings of Israel. He tore down all of the Israelites' idols and even destroyed the bronze serpent that Moses had made. Not because it was bad, but because the Israelites turned that into an idol also. They started worshiping it and gave it a name. Hezekiah denied the leadership of Assyria that they forced on the Jewish people, and they weren't happy, by the way. The king of Assyria sent the Rabshakeh, which is an ancient title for a prince, and he and King Hezekiah had quite a legendary standoff. So Hezekiah inquired of Isaiah the prophet, and Isaiah's answer from God is just awesome. Isaiah says, God will put a spirit in him, and he'll hear rumors and leave. Hezekiah then prayed for protection, and God answered him through a word from Isaiah, which included a ton of spirit-inspired mockery for the Rabshakeh. He said, I'll put my hook in your nose and my bit in your mouth, and I'll turn you back on the way by which you came. Mic drop. And the angel of the Lord struck down a large portion of the Rabshakeh's army, so the Rabshakeh's like, never mind, just like the prophecy said. Hezekiah then got sick, and Isaiah told him that he would get better, and Isaiah had someone make him a healing fig cake. That sounds good. And he showed him a miracle of a shadow moving in the opposite direction. The final act of Hezekiah's life is sad though. Isaiah prophesied to him the future exile of the people of the southern kingdom to Babylon. Because remember, the northern kingdom now is gone in Assyria, but the southern kingdom is still standing, but they too soon would be exiled. We then see shorter paragraphs and stories about the final kings of Israel. So Manasseh, he's evil. He's the worst of them all. He practiced child sacrifice. God promised to wipe Jerusalem as one wipes a dish because of the incredible evil of Manasseh. Then there's Amon. He's also evil. His servants turned on him and killed him. And that angry mob that killed Amon made the next king, Josiah. Josiah wasn't even a man yet though. He was only 8 years old when he began to reign. This is a picture of my nephew Carter. He's 8 years old right now. Crazy, so young. It's like God was like, the adults have messed this up for thousands of years. Let's just try a kid. And here's what's important. Young or old, he did what was right in God's eyes. When he was 26 years old, he reformed the country, repaired the temple, and when they were doing that, they found the book of Moses and read it to him. They were like, it's all dusty, and no one had read it in so long. He tore his clothes and commanded that everyone obey or be cursed. Josiah then read the Pentateuch to the people, and they committed with him together to covenant to obey the words of Moses and the Lord. Josiah then went through the whole country, decimating everything that was evil and against God's law. They came up to a statue of a guy at Bethel, and he was like, what's this? And they were like, that's a guy from hundreds of years ago who prophesied in 1 Kings 13 that someone named Josiah would be doing what you are doing right now. It's like such an awesome and meta moment. And of course, they didn't destroy that monument. Josiah even kept the first Passover since the time of the judges. Basically, he's just a total boss. He's like, has the strength of Samson, the spirit of Hezekiah, the lineage of David. Chapter 23, verse 25 says about Josiah, before him there was no king like him who turned to the Lord with all his heart, with all his soul, and with all his might, according to the law of Moses. Not bad. Speaking of bad, we have some more kings. Jehoahaz, evil. Jehoiakim, evil. Are they just making making up names that sound like each other. Jehoiakim, evil also. During his reign, the southern kingdom was taken into captivity by King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, exile. And Nebuchadnezzar left a king for the people who were left over. His name was Zedekiah. He was evil too. He ended up with his eyes gouged out during a siege from the Babylon people where they took the rest of the Israelites. They took everything. They took all the gold and riches from Solomon's temple, all the tools from the temple that were used to worship God from Leviticus, all of it, gone. All the promises of Moses had come true. They disobeyed for hundreds of years. Many during Joshua, most during Judges, all during Samuel and Kings. The disobey and be cursed clause was coming into effect. Moses said in Deuteronomy 29, what people will say if you disobey. And honestly, it could be printed right here in 2 Kings 25. It's exactly what happened. It says in verse 25, then the people will say, it's because they abandoned the covenant of the Lord, the God of their fathers, which he made with them when he brought them out of the land of Egypt. Then it says in verse 28, and the Lord uprooted them from their land in anger and fury and great wrath, and cast them into another land, as they are this day. People must have been reading this stuff being like, how did we not know this is gonna happen? The message of Kings is simple. We know the forever king that was prophesied about in 2 Samuel 7, and each king we're like, is that him? Is that him? Jehoahaz, Hezekiah, is that him? No. The message of Kings is that with earthly kings, things get worse. Wait for the heavenly king. Remember what they wrote over Jesus as he hung on the cross, King of the Jews. And remember what name will be written on Jesus' thigh and robe when he returns as prophesied in Revelation 19, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. The Jesus moment in Kings is the anticipation for the fulfillment of the prophecy. There were a ton of prophets who prophesied during the time of the kings, and we're gonna get to hear all of their stories and prophecies soon. Joel, Micah, Isaiah, Daniel, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, Jonah, Hosea. Almost all the major and minor prophets lived during this time. So when we read their prophecies, remember, they were living and speaking during the time of the kings, which fits right into our narrative of the Old Testament and of the whole Bible. God created, man fell, Jesus promised, Jesus fulfilled, Jesus followed, Jesus returning, and the Bible is God's word.